بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين في كل وقت وحين يا ربنا لك الحمد وإلى شرف النبي الفاتحة. Bismillah. So we're going to continue talking today about our relationships, healthy relationships. And today we're going to focus on what do I feel or think about God, so my relationship with the Creator, and my relationship with Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And we can include in that as well, you can add to that my relationship, your relationship that is, with Al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen, all of the prophets of God. Okay, but obviously we have a special focus on Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but we can also talk about whether we have a healthy relationship with all the prophets and the concept of prophethood. Sometimes when we think about that and we think about our modern world, even the concept of prophethood seems like such a strange thing. The idea that someone has come from another realm, practically. They're a human being, but with a completely different paradigm than that which exists in the material world, and with a very clear mission to guide people, to be the true activist, if you like, but in a completely different way than we understand activism or leadership or any of those things today. So sometimes it's important to rekindle our sense of gratitude for the very fact that there could be such a thing as prophets and guides, and then assess how we feel when we hear someone say Noah, or when we hear someone say Moses, or when we think about the flood that happened, or maybe we never even think about those things to begin with, or those people. So we have to bring this back into the forefront when we think about relationships. And I hope that you are sort of seeing, as we talk about healthy relationships, someone on the first day said, when are we going to talk about relationships with other people? We still aren't there yet. It's here in the document that I'm sort of going from. By the way, this document is from a little knowledge retreat that we did in Edmonton, where they asked us to focus on healthy relationships. So that's why there's an actual document in front of me. So yes, it's here, and we will eventually get to that point, but it's just to say that each one of us has a relationship with so many things and so many concepts and so many realities other than just other people in our current situation, our current life. So that's really profound to think that all of these things have a relationship with us, our built environment, our natural environment, our virtual environment. We affect those things and they affect us. So how we choose to relate to these things has also an effect on things that are far away from us. You know, the butterfly effect or the ripple effect. This is real. So how you choose to interact with a particular thing has profound effects on many other people, and many other things, many other creatures. So just to understand, you're part of an entire ecosystem or an entire web of relationships, a whole network of being. So you really matter in terms of the decisions that you make on a daily basis. From a spiritual perspective, I know that you've heard this from an ecological perspective for sure. You know, poor choices can lead to, collectively the ruination of the entire world, essentially. You can help to destroy the ozone layer and all kinds of things. We know that from that reality, but spiritually we kind of tend to forget that we have a spiritual impact on the entire spiritual container that contains human beings in this life. Okay, the spiritual ozone layer. The spiritual ozone layer could be like the saints and the awliya. We know in our tradition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about those people who, if it were not for them, the rain would not come down. Even the physical world would be affected. These are people who stay up at night and they make dua, they cry about the state of the world. They don't just condemn, the state of the world, or they don't just state that look what a terrible thing this or that is. They do say that to help people. They do point out what's wrong and what needs to be changed, but they also go home and spend the night praying about it. They cry about it. They care about it deeply. They care about suffering that they see on a spiritual level. And that if it were not for those people, all of us would be destroyed. It's kind of like an ozone layer protecting us from our reality, the reality of our own sins. There are other people who are making dua that really minimizes the evil of the world. It mitigates it. Lots of bad things are happening, but there are mitigators. There are people whose presence and the way that they interact with God is like a healing hand being put over the wounds of the world. So we can choose to be part of that and stand with those people and support that ozone layer, or we can also put holes in it. We all have a role to play. There's nobody who's going to be able to say, I'm neutral. I didn't play a part in global warming. You can't. As long as you live here, you're playing some kind of role. And the same is true of our collective spiritual reality. We're all playing a role. Nobody's a bystander. So we're going to talk a little bit about, like I said, how do I feel or think about God? Does anyone want to share any reflection that you undertook over the past 2 weeks since we first talked about this?
Bismillah. Something that I am not in the habit of practicing, but I've been reflecting on a lot, and especially when you think about it in the context of relationships, you think about how we engage with people. That's the default that people think about. And one of the ways we engage is to communicate. And so I never actively thought of my dua as a conversation with Allah, and so I've been reflecting more on that and literally thinking of it as a conversation, because while I may not have the typical response back as you would with a human being, the responses are around us if we notice them sometimes, subhanAllah. So just been reflecting on that.
MashaAllah, that's great. Anyone else?
I think since the beginning of the halaqah, there's been a real emphasis on that relationship, right? So the relationship with the Prophet ﷺ and the relationship with Allah. And I think that I just kind of absorbing the message over time, I've shifted the way that I interact and just my emotional, the emotional, I guess, direction that those interactions take. And so I see it as a very close relationship now. And there's a more intimacy than there used to be. I think it was more formalized, and that was the way that I was always taught, right? Is that it's a very formal relationship, and there's a very clear prescription for when you make dua, like you have to start with this, you have to say this, you have to do that. I got told, don't beg. Begging is like very, it's very distasteful. Don't beg. You should be very kind of solemn. Yeah, I literally got told this. I was like, okay, that's kind of strange, but anyways.
Going against the hadith. There is a clear hadith about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes the person who repeats their request, which is to beg, and who even, their voice is a certain way. they're
Yeah.
asking, which is
Yeah.
in need. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says, who is the one who answers al-muttar, the one who desperately is asking.
Yeah.
This is another way of saying beg.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I think yeah, the intimacy has changed, and my comfort level has changed in that respect. And so I find myself feeling closer, and just feel it feels like a healthier relationship in a way. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. That's great. Anyone else want to share? You don't have to say all positive things. You could say something you're still find yourself going back to as a habit, or something like that. We can understand something intellectually, but sometimes we find when we look at it, when we actually take time to reflect on it, we realize I'm not really applying this knowledge that I have about how Allah can be there for me and things like that. So
just to follow up on that, I do remember a long time ago having like a strictly intellectual idea, and that really being tested with some real tribulation, and in that moment thinking, I thought I had trust in God. I thought that He would be there for me, but the feeling wasn't that at all. And just coming to recognize that my trust was actually elsewhere, even though I thought it was there. So I think that was the beginning of my journey of really having a focus on experience, like really valuing experience over just intellectual understanding. And one of the most important things, I think, for me, the way that's evolved is just, I find myself talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. Which, I mean, when I first started to, it was just natural. I would be just, and all of a sudden, under my breath, I would be talking to Allah about, I don't know, anything. And, there were times when something would happen and there would be a crisis, and I would be, I gotta call my person, right? And I hope she's there. And if I got the message, it would be like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And now I don't even think about calling her. Because I think if God can't help me, like she's not, and if she was gonna help me, it would only be because He allowed it. So I find I'm so much more able to just sit and trust that He already knows anyway, but for me to be able to say, look, like no one can help me but you. So just being, in the experience, I find such a big difference between me thinking I know something or thinking I understand something and then actually having it tested and saying yes or no.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Okay. Bismillah. I think that my relationship with God has gone through a lot of ups and downs, and in some ways it's almost contradictory, where my deep belief in Allah's capacity to do anything almost was like the ruin of my relationship with Allah at one point, because it was like, you have the power to do this, and this is all I wanted, or this is all I prayed for, or this or that or whatever, and this inability to accept or find peace in not getting something that is within Allah's power, because everything is within Allah's power, and to have, not even just have rida is like high level, but like even just be able to move on and continue a relationship with Allah that's healthy. It was such a struggle, but And to a degree, it is still, but now my tawakkul is stronger. But it's still that kind of back and forth between the struggle of making dua and having a relationship with a being who can't actually speak back to you directly in words. So it really takes what Heba was saying, where you have to start seeing answers and communication through other things, because we won't get them in words responding directly back to whatever we ask. And that's part of the journey, is to not have the answers and not have a response, and still put your affairs in Allah's hands and have a strong enough relationship to know that you're being taken care of, even if you're not getting what you think would take care of you or what you think is the best. And that's hard.
Yeah, I think you raised a very interesting point, actually, that really underlines the whole need for a mentor and a need for spiritual guides. Because we do believe that we can hear God's word through people, certain people. This is part of our beliefs. That's why we have shuyukh, not just to come and do a weekend retreat. The original purpose, because you don't need to have a weekend retreat. It's not going, it's helpful, but it's not a make or break for your relationship with God. But you do need someone who, at times in your life, particular times especially, can translate the language of God. You have the textbook in your hand, but you don't always understand the language. And you need someone who understands that language and can translate it for you. And that's the role of a sheikh, who is a mentor, who's there for people in their personal lives. So, I'm using the word sheikh, mentor. The idea is someone who has some sense of this language of God and who is available to people. So not someone who is sort of taking a role of perhaps teaching, only teaching, let's say, on TV or on YouTube and teaching a lot of great texts and stuff like that, but someone who you can actually, go to and say, this and this and this is what's going on. How can I hear the voice of God in this? What is it that God is saying to me? What is it that God wants of me? So this is a really important person to have, this kind of a guide or mentor. And it's really important that you want to know that language, that you want to hear what God is asking of you or telling you, on the one hand. And the other part of it is that you can come to understand that language yourself with time. You don't have to have someone doing that for your whole life. Eventually you can start to pick up on the language yourself, and won't have to rely that much on anyone else. But what that really takes is a lot of safa. You have to have a lot of clarity, spiritual clarity, to understand that language. If you are full of a lot of different sort of tashwish, you have a lot of different signals coming in at the same time, you won't be able to pick up on that signal from Allah. So I talked before about the old style transistor radio, and I don't know if you've ever had an experience with one. My dad used to listen to one. He was very excited when he found it secondhand one year, and it was like this massive gray thing. And he used to just, you'd have to really take a lot of time to tune it, because you could get signals from radio stations all over the world with the one that my dad had anyway. So you could pick up on sometimes he would call me over and he'd be listening to Russian radio, and this is obviously before internet, right? So it's quite something if you think about it, to be able to, oh wow, this is coming all the way from Russia, or this is from Iran, or this is from wherever. And of course, in between there's this static noise that's really, it's because you're not picking up on one individual signal. It's between signals, or it's a bunch of signals at the same time. So you have to move the antenna and stuff like that to get the right station that you want to tune into. And so we're like that as human beings. We sometimes we don't have the clear reception, and there are people who do have that reception. So we need to go to them to seek advice. And istisharah is necessary in any significant decision that you're making. Istikhara and istisharah is seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your own, through your own reaching out to Him, and through your own letting go of your biases, which is what istikhara is. That's the whole point of the prayer of istikhara. It's not to become, it's not a crystal ball that's going to show you stuff. It's not to set you up to see some kind of dreams and stuff like that. It's just to let go of your own biases in that decision, so that you can actually be open to the way that Allah is guiding you, because He's always guiding us. But so that you don't interfere with that guidance by all your own signals that are coming in. And if you look at the dua of istikhara, you can see that. It's saying, if you think that this is best for me, make it happen. And if you see that it's not good for me, don't let it happen, and let me let it go. And you know, and I don't know. To me, that is the most powerful line in the whole dua. You know, فَإِنَّكَ تَعْلَمْ وَلَا أَعْلَمْ. How beautiful that is. You know, and I don't know. How rare it is for us to actually recognize that reality in our daily life. It takes istikhara prayer to put you in that state for most of us. Most of us think we know quite well what needs to happen at any moment in the day and how things should go. Very rarely do you find someone waking up and saying, you know, and I don't know, so whatever happens today, make me happy with it. Right? And that's considered to be one of the states of true closeness to Allah, is that equanimity. Whatever happens is the same to you. Because it's all from Allah, so you're not having massive reactions on one side or the other. Because only Allah knows what's good and what's bad. We don't know. But not everybody is at that state, obviously, but at least we're asked to enter into that state when it comes to making decisions, or when it comes to a juncture in our lives where we're going to have to accept how things go, one way or the other, and it's an important thing to us, such as marriage, such as moving, such as, I don't know, other big things like that. Okay? So this is part of the picture when we're asking for something from Allah, even in a dua. Istikhara has to be there, and the state of istikhara is what's most important, is that you're not attached to a particular outcome. Because you're asking in that dua, and you're actually the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the companions to make istikhara very often, not only in these big things that I just mentioned, but actually all the time. And he asked them to memorize the dua the way that he asked them to memorize Qur'an, so it would always be available to them, so they could do it whenever they needed to. And for many people, they have to go to a book to look up the dua, or they have to go online. And so it just shows that we're not really living according to that advice of the Prophet ﷺ, that it should be on the tip of your tongue, so you can use it very, very often to go into that state of, I accept whatever you've destined for me, and I ask that you be the one, Ya Allah, who makes whatever happen. Whatever should happen. So that's the point of istikhara. And then there's istisharah. Istisharah is consulting. You have to consult people. Who do you have to consult? You have to consult someone who knows you, who has some sense of who you are and your state, and someone who has some ability to explain to you this language of God as it's unfolding or manifesting in a particular situation in your life that you're asking about. So those are the two things that are needed in a person who you're asking advice of. And istikhara and istisharah are both things that you need when it comes to anything that you're seeking, when it comes to any situation. At least if you're not actually going to do istikhara, it's that state that we should try to aim for. And that state is a state of wanting good, but trusting that you don't know what good is. You're asking for good. You are asking for something in the dua. You're not just saying whatever happens, even if you send me to hell, I'm okay with that. No. You're asking for good, but you're saying, I don't know where good lies, though. Ya Allah, give me something that's good for me in my dunya and my akhirah. Give me that which will benefit my life in this world and the next, but I don't know what it is. It could be you're taking this thing away. It could be you're absolutely preventing me from marrying this man, or it could be you making me marry this man and then us having trouble in our marriage. Maybe that will be the way that you choose to prepare me for a very high station in Jannah. What do I know? I don't know how this is going to pan out. I have no idea how this story is going to unfold. But I do want good. And I don't know what the good is. Maybe it's very good for me to have a rocky marriage. Maybe it will cure me of my arrogance and all my other attitude problems that I've had until that point. Maybe it will set things in place for me. It will be a challenge where I have to keep coming back and making dua, to keep coming back and learning to compromise. I'm not talking about an abusive relationship, guys. Please don't go there. A rocky marriage, a rocky relationship. Some of us have that with our parents. It's a fact of life. These things exist. It doesn't mean you give up necessarily. We don't know where the good lies. And we absolutely have to absorb this understanding of life and of our relationship with Allah. We just don't know. How many are the stories that seemed to be something on the surface and were completely something else? And the hadith are full of these stories too. People who seem to be doing very well. The woman who the companions talked to the Prophet ﷺ about and said she fasts more than anyone else and she prays more than anyone else, but she's not good to her neighbors. And the Prophet ﷺ said she's going to be in hell for that. Things are not what they seem. Right? So, and this is one of the most powerful gifts that a religious outlook can give you, is that you don't just follow the crowd and what they think is good. You're not absorbing every message that you're getting from society about what is good. You're recognizing that there's a whole other world and God defines what's good. The Prophet ﷺ praised and talked about a person who is very loved by Allah, who when they're in a gathering, nobody notices that they're there and nobody says salam to them, and who when they're absent from a gathering, nobody remembers and that they were supposed to be there and nobody even recognizes that they're absent. This person, Sayyidina Muhammad said, is very loved by God. It seems like a pretty miserable state to be in if nobody even knows if you're there or not. Seems like you're not a very successful person in terms of what makes this world lovely to be in, which is that people recognize you and greet you and take care of you and call you up when you're not there. And yet this is a person who's loved by God. So humble that their presence or absence is not marked by anyone. This runs completely counter to what we would think is good. And yet it's good. So, and again, there are many, many teachings like that which strike you and teach you that don't assume that things have to be a certain way in order for you to be contented or complete or to feel that you've been successful in this life. Don't measure it by these measurements that you have, that you've been given by society. There's another way that things can be, and there are other meanings that things can have. And the most important thing is how God looks at you. And that's it. That's all that matters. So, when we have to have a certain amount of detachment then from our own perception of what is good. And we have to have a willingness and a flexibility to allow God to show us something other than what we thought should happen. And when it comes to something like what you're asking for in terms of closeness to the Prophet ﷺ, or what you're asking for in terms of your life with Allah, your spiritual well-being, that is a place where you should insist, and you can say things like, Allah, you can make anything happen. I know I don't deserve to be a neighbor of the Prophet ﷺ in Jannah, but you can make it happen. In fact, you have to speak like that about things like that because there's no other way you're going to ever get there. Really, you're competing against a lot of people. So that's one case where you really have to speak in this language that you were using, Nur, of, Ya Allah, you can make anything happen. I know, as you know, logically speaking, I shouldn't even dare to ask for something like that. Knowing what I know about who I am and knowing what I know about all the generations that have come before me, as well as the wonderful people around me who deserve more than I do. But in this kind of case, you can be insistent and you can use that language. But we really should be careful about using that kind of language when it comes to something of the dunya. Because we don't know what's best in this case. And we in the things like, oh, I want to be with the Prophet ﷺ on the Day of Judgment. Ya Allah, let me drink from his hand. Ya Allah, let me get to spend time with Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam in Jannah. These are goods. These are 100% good. There's no doubt about it. But there's nothing else like that. Nothing of dunya is like that. You can't say that having a baby is a good, 100%. You don't know. It could be the death of you. It's been the death of many women. Right? Happens. You can't say that marriage is 100% good. And you can't go into a situation where you start to determine, well, I want a baby and I want the baby to also be wonderful and a great son or a great daughter in every single way, and that I never have to suffer and it's never going to be hard, and I want the husband to be like a Ken doll and just be there and be handsome and just sort of assist me to have my Barbie life. I'm just joking with you. I know that you're not asking for that, but you have to, there is a certain humility when it comes to asking for things in dunya that absolutely has to accompany the way that we're making dua. And we can't come to a position of almost being like, you owe it to me. Because you have the capacity to do that for me, you have to do it. We can't go to that place. Nobody has to do anything for you, least of all God. He doesn't have to, just because he has the power doesn't mean that he has to make it subservient to your will. There's his will and there's your will. And his will is what will be done. This is the truth. And we have to ask. There's a very important way that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. It's described as being, having tadarra, having humility, and having a sense of khashya, having a sense of also quietness and stillness about us as we ask him. And recognizing that he can say yes or no to the particular thing. But that he's heard us and he's answered. As you know, he answers in 3 different ways at least. So that he's held back an evil that was destined for us. Or he's put aside good for us in the akhirah, or he will give you what you asked for specifically. And knowing that, again, it's another example of how the reality, the spiritual reality runs on a different system than the dunya reality that we're used to. Is that Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ said, when he was talking about the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers our dua, he said that people, when they see what other people are getting and what they get of the answers to those dua that were kept aside for them for Jannah, they will wish that not a single dua had been answered for them in this life. They'll feel like I should have just waited because this is far greater than anything I could have asked for in this life. So this is something we need to sit with and think about and allow this to be the way that we think and not be so driven by our desires that we cannot accept that we will be in that state. We will be, all of us. You and I, all of us are going to be like, I wish I got nothing. All of those 65 years that I lived, I wish I had gotten nothing. Because this is the eternity, and this is where everything is going to happen. So it's going to be you, it's going to be me. So then we need to accept that from now and say, yeah, subhanAllah, so there's more to it than what I can see and what I can perceive and what I think in this moment. Right? So that's the way that we have to understand. It's not, I think I would just say, be careful of saying that it was your complete trust in God's capacity that led you to a problem in terms of not having a dua answered. It's not you have to have a complete trust in God's capacity, but you can never put yourself in a position where you can go above His will or assume that His will must conform to your desire and your wish. There's a whole system that has to be in place. We can't just take one part and sort of misunderstand it in our relationship with Him. We have to know that His love comes in many, many ways, just like a human being, if you think about it. Just like a parent. I mean, a child shouldn't say, Mom, because you love me and because you can give me chocolate every single day. You can. You have the money and you have the hands and you know where chocolate is to be found. You have to do that for me. Or going to the park is a great thing. You have to do that for me. You have to take me there. You're capable, you have a car, it's good for me. It still doesn't mean that that's how she sees things and that's how she's going to make things happen on a particular day. And it's not because she doesn't love the child. I know I'm making it very simplistic in the way I'm explaining it, but you have to have a sense of, I'm down here and you're up there. You know, up there, not physically, I'm not talking physically, but that you are all-knowing. Yes, you are all powerful, you're also all-knowing. And I'm not. I don't know what's good for me. My mind and my heart are leaning very much towards this thing, but I also know that you love me more than I could ever love myself. And you see beyond what I see. I can't see the full reality of this thing. I don't know what it's going to look like. If you give it to me now, I don't know if it will be my very destruction 5 years from now. It will be the very thing that kills me. It will be the very thing that rips away my faith. God knows. There are all kinds of things that can be there. People sometimes make dua and subhanAllah, there was a woman I know of. My teacher told us this story, and she had a kind of disability pension that was coming to her from the government. This is in Syria, it's not here. And she lost it at a certain point for whatever reason. She was no longer eligible or something like that. And she had one daughter, and she went for Hajj, this woman. And she was making tawaf, and her only dua was, Ya Allah, whatever it takes, give me back that pension. Whatever it takes, I want that pension back. She came back and her daughter got diagnosed with cancer in her eyes, and she got that pension back. They got that pension. It's just to say, be careful what you ask for, be careful how you ask, be careful what you understand is good and bad and all of those things. Have some sense of, there are mysteries that are far beyond our capacity. We have to have that way of being with God. We cannot think that we know everything. It's a very dangerous position to be in. We have to really be like, okay, I don't know. Yeah, I want this thing or I want that thing, or I perceive that as a loss, but God knows best. Wallahu a'lam. Wallahu a'lam. Only God knows. And really for past generations, that way of behaving was a way of life. It wasn't something that they had to be taught. Really, they digested everything in their life with that, in that way. God knows best. Inshallah khair. Inshallah khair will be coming from this. Even when it was something that looked bad, what did they say? Inshallah khair. Inshallah it's good. That's actually the classical line that people say when there's something bad that's happening or they're disappointed. They say Inshallah khair. What does that mean? Inshallah it will be khair in the end, or inshallah the reality of it is that it's good. Look at that beautiful thing. You can't find an equivalent of that in our English language. Asa an yakun khair. Allah knows best, and may it be that this turns out to be something that's a blessing. So this is all actually related to how I feel and think about God. It's very important to be close and to feel an intimacy with God. It's also very important to know that He is beyond our... He sees much more than what we see. He hears, of course, everything, and He knows better. And that we can trust that, and that it won't be a disappointment to us, because what ultimately matters is what happens to you in your akhirah. You can survive everything in this life, as long as you have something there at the end of the day when you die, in the next world that you'll be in forever. We're not people of dunya. We can't be. And to be a person of dunya means to be a person who only thinks about this dunya. It doesn't mean to be someone who has a love of cars and a love of this and a love of that and a love of expensive clothes. You can actually love those things and be a person of akhirah. It's about where your mind is. It's about what makes it to your outlook. What length of time is making it into your outlook for your future. That's what decides if you're a person of akhirah or a person of dunya. If when you think about your future, it only goes as far as the next few years or up to your retirement, and you don't ever think past that point and think about what's my death going to look like? What's the day after my death going to look like? What's my eternity going to look like? Then you are a person of dunya. Even if you're pursuing completely halal things in this dunya, there are still things of this dunya. Marriage, children, wealth of this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about children often in Qur'an in this way. Your wealth and your children will not be of any avail to you on that day. Those things that take so much of our attention in this life, so much of our time. So many times, a mother's entire thought process, day and night, revolves around her children. Allah is reminding us with love that it's not going to help you if you have forgotten about your meeting with me, our one-on-one meeting that's going to happen. And if you don't take care of what's between you and me, and if you don't make your care of those children a means for you to actually experience who I am, if you separate that marriage and those children from your experience with me, then it's not going to help you. Those things are not going to help you. Because they're not good in and of themselves. They're only good insofar as they bring you to Him. Because there are far better wives and far better mothers than many of the Muslim women today who are non-Muslim. Being able to sacrifice for your children, being able to bring them the world, being able to afford them the best opportunities, these are not things that are necessarily acts of worship. Everybody's doing that for their children. Whether you're an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim, it's very natural to want to do that for your children. So it's not enough. It has to be tied to God and has to be a means to approach God and to experience the fact that you have a Creator through that marriage, through those children. So we can be insistent, and we should be insistent about matters of our akhirah. And let's just think for a moment, how much percentage, how much airtime do concerns for our akhirah get in our minds, in our dua? Do they even figure in our dua? Are you asking for anything in your akhirah other than get me into Jannah? Just get me into Jannah, it's not enough. If you're a person of akhirah, you are quote unquote planning it out as you would plan out your next week or plan out your vacation or whatever it is that you look forward to. There are different things to be had in the eternity. Right? There are different levels. There are different levels of exposure to God Himself. There are different levels of sweetness. There are different levels of being with the Prophet ﷺ. And if you don't ask then that tells you something about what's going on with you. In fact, we should put one item down here, my relationship with my eternity. Have I given it a thought? Do I care what's going to happen to me? And if not to you, what about your family? What about your parents? Your loved ones? Where do you all want to be? Where do you want them to be? These are things that need to be thought about. They need to be invested in. They need to be prepared for. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about these things in that way. He used even that metaphor. Who would like to have an orchard in Jannah? And these were people who knew what orchards were. They had orchards in Medina. Who would like to have an orchard in Jannah? He's using that language of preparation and planting. The Prophet ﷺ said, okay, every time you say Subhanallah, one seed of a tree will be planted for you. And every time you say Alhamdulillah, another seed will be planted for you. It's symbolic, but it's a sense of prepare now. Plant the seeds today for that joy that you're going to experience later. And he talked about akhirah that way. He never talked about dunya that way. Dunya was whatever comes to you, be pleased with it. Akhirah was set your sights on that. Start to aim now for where you want to be. Prepare, plant, seek, yearn. Whoever makes hijrah for Allah and His Messenger has made hijrah for Allah and His Messenger. Whoever makes hijrah, whoever makes a journey or takes a step towards something for the sake of marrying someone or to get something from this dunya, then that is what they have made hijrah for. This is the first hadith in the collection of Imam al-Nawawi. It's 40 hadith. It's about intention, planting. What you care about, what you plant inside here is an intention. And it's very, very clear. Getting something from the dunya or marrying, these are halal things, but these cannot be your reason. These cannot be your focus. These cannot be what you aim for when you set out on the journey of this life. These are things that will happen or not happen. But what really matters is that you go towards Allah and His Messenger. Every single day, every single way that you can. Every single time you get up to pray, dhuhr or asr or anything, that you're seeking to bring yourself one more step closer to Allah and His Messenger, and you're doing it for Allah and His Messenger. You're not doing it because it's your habit to pray, or you feel like you just got to do it because that's your culture, that's your ritual. But it's for Allah and His Messenger. I'm bringing myself one more step closer on this hijrah that I'm going on. So it's important to be vulnerable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be able to be as comfortable and vulnerable that you can talk, as Sister Yasmin was saying, you can talk all the time to Allah about anything and everything. You don't feel you have to hide anything. You can talk about the silliest things. You can talk about things that other people might not be interested in hearing you say. You can talk about those things to Allah. You can say, look at my day seems so off today, Ya Allah. I just don't know why. Please help me. Help me get through it. Forgive me for, a few interactions I've had with people that were really off, that I know I don't feel good about. Forgive me. Help me to get better. Show me some of your love. I need it. You can talk like that. Probably not a lot of people would entertain that kind of a phone call from you. People are busy. But you can be, even more vulnerable than that. There are all kinds of ways that we can show our vulnerability to Allah. At the same time as not forgetting that He is Allah and we are not on an equal footing with Him. And we cannot treat Him, as we said before, like our butler, who was just there to get stuff done for us or to facilitate our dunya desires. That's not the nature of the relationship that we have with Allah. He's not a facilitator of every desire that we have. And I think that this is a really important point, because it applies as well to how we even seek advice, or we consult with other people, because it's become more and more common to have that kind of perspective that I will just do and listen to and get from any experience what serves me. what serves me. And who is the me that we're talking about? Usually it's the ego. And a lot of people are approaching a lot of their relationships like this, not only with Allah, but with a lot of things and people. So long as I'm feeling good, I'm being made to feel good, I'll pursue it. But if it gets challenging, I'm out. Don't need that. And so we know that it's already there in a lot of marriages, where if it's going a little bit rocky and the other person is not accommodating all your needs, people are ready to jump ship. But something that you may not know is how common it is now, even with situations of somebody seeking advice in their religious life. So a friend was just telling me about a situation where the person was, I wanted to ask a question. It was a fiqh question. And asked somebody, and the person didn't give them the answer that they wanted. The person gave a very reasonable answer. There was nothing, I know what the answer that was given was, and it was nothing offensive, it was nothing dismissive, it was just, this is what, has been said about this issue. And the response of the person who asked was, I felt very unsupported by that answer. Now the person didn't say, look, I'm struggling, these are the things. It was just a very cut and dry question. Is this allowed or not? So if you're not going to give more and say, look, by the way, I'm also struggling with a lot of things in my life. And okay, once you start to say that, people can offer you support. But if you ask a cut and dry question, what does it mean if that answer doesn't feel supportive to you? Just because it didn't support the whim and the desire and the ego position you had already taken on that matter. And that's kind of where we're at. It's a reality. This is how it is. People, they ask for advice, and then if you say something that they don't like, they'll tell you that was not what I wanted to hear. That's not what I needed to hear, actually. Sorry, not what I needed to hear. Not what I wanted to hear, I can take that one. That's fine. We all hear stuff we don't want to hear at times. Can't help that. That's reality. But to come to the level where you think that you know what you need, even in this realm of getting advice, then why are you even asking for advice? Just go get what you need some other way. You know what you need already? What I'm trying to say is there's a real incapacity to be a little bit flexible and just say, why was that said to me? Nothing in this world is a coincidence. If you went seeking advice for the sake of God, and somebody responded to you in a particular way, sit with that. Don't have a reaction, that's not what I needed to hear. Okay, why don't you write your own message to yourself and send it to yourself, and then you can open it and it will be exactly what you need. And I'm really not talking about situations where anything hurtful was said to them. Nobody's talking about, yeah, you deserve that, and good that happened. It's not even like that. Very gentle, but I just wanted to be validated, 100%, in how I was seeing this. But there's so much more than what you see. And the joy of life should be to discover that there's much more than what I was seeing in any situation. That's how we should be raising people, to strive for that, not to strive to be right all the time, but to strive to get to a place of discovering other possibilities. And that's actually what a really good counselor can do for you, is they challenge the very thing that you're complaining about. And they say, could it actually be this? Could it actually be that person doesn't really have it out for you or have it in for you? And they just, this is actually what they're thinking as they do X, Y, or Z in your life. That should be a moment of fatah for you. You should be like, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, I don't have to hold anything against them anymore. Alhamdulillah, there's another way to see this. Alhamdulillah, that person is actually innocent probably, and I was just, making all this up because I was so stressed. But now you've given me this new key that allows me to come back to ihsan and purity and clarity of the heart in my dealing with this person. That's how you should feel. And that's how we should raise people. That's what it means to want to be educated. That's education, is when you learn these things about your own life and about the limitations of your own way of seeing the world, and you rejoice that there's far more than what meets the eye. So when you are at that kind of a place, that's when you're really ready to have your spiritual journey with Allah. And when you're not ready to be self-reflective, and you're not ready for someone to invite you into a state of self-awareness, when you're not ready to hold up a mirror to yourself, then you're not really ready to go on any spiritual journey. So we've talked before about, I know people have asked about, having a teacher, having a sheikh, having a guide. If you find that you're not in that place where I want to discover how I might be wrong, and I don't trust everything that my own mind tells me about how situations are, and that was that person's fault for not speaking to me the way I should have been spoken to, or not recognizing the input I was giving into that project, or that it's all another person's fault. If you're not ready to be invited into a space of being like, actually, you are at fault, or it takes two to tango, it's both your and her fault, or whatever the situation is. If you're not ready for that, then you're definitely not ready to have a teacher. You come to a teacher when you want that kind of experience, when you want a mirror, when you're like, I really need a mirror, I can't do this anymore. I'm going out every day thinking that I look gorgeous, and I'm not. Like, I don't know how I look. I really don't know unless I have a mirror. I'm fooling myself. I may have stuff all over my face. I may have spinach in between my teeth. There's no way I can know, but I really would value if there could be a mirror put up in my house. I'd really appreciate that. I wouldn't smash the mirror when it tried to show me who I am. I would actually take care of it. I'd clean it so it keeps giving me a good reflection, so I can see what's going on, and I would be grateful. So the idea of having a teacher is not some romantic thing of, I have a sheikh, it's so nice. No, it's not that. It's about your personal desire to improve. And improvement has to be when you recognize your reality, and you allow someone else to show you your reality, and then you start to work on that, and work from that place of humility. And because it's about purification, because it's about getting that spinach out of your teeth and things like that, it has to be said that a mentor is a very powerful tool in that journey, in that process. Someone who has the authority and who you allow to tell you things like that you've got spinach between your teeth and you're protecting that spinach like it's gold. Can you stop now? It's a very powerful tool. But there are millions of people who don't have that, but whose society and whose life circumstance has given them that same experience as if they had a mentor. It's been a kind of a polishing of their hearts because of the way that they reacted and responded to their life and what life has given them. So there are many people, for example, like our grandmothers. They maybe never attended one religious lesson. They never had a sheikh they could go and talk to and say, how should I improve? What should I do? But they had, their life was of a certain nature where I'm going to just speak of my own grandmother, and one grandmother in particular, certain tragedies that she had to deal with, certain difficulties in her marriage, and again, not abuse, just learning to deal with someone who was quite a difficult person, and growing in each of those opportunities, growing as a better person. Now, I don't know why it was that she was able to respond to everything in that way. I can't tell you. I have never asked her. She passed away before I had the chance to recognize really who she was. But, she became an orphan at a young age. She had to raise her siblings. She had to deal with a very mean stepmother. And then she went on to marry a husband who, had a big temper and was difficult, very particular man. And she had a child her first child, who they loved very much, who passed away at the age of 20. And, and other of her children who had some mental illnesses. And just each thing brought her closer to God and made her sweeter and softer, and as if each thing was just polishing her more and more. So life, for certain people, plays that role. And we need to recognize that it's the case for many, many women in our history, because many women didn't have that ability in the past to just go out and go and sit with a sheikh for hours and stuff like that. They were sometimes raising 7 children at a time and so on, and housework was much more strenuous than it is today, and for many reasons. And many shuyukh, they even today they'll tell mothers who say, I'm trying to do this Quran reading, and I'm trying to keep up with my dhikr, and I can't. I know a shaykh who asked a woman who said that to him, that I'm trying so hard to keep up, and I find I can't. He said, how many children do you have? Or do you have children? Yes, I have children. How many children do you have? I have 3. And he said, your children are your path. Your children are that mentor. Your children are your dhikr. So your experience and the people in your life, and as Sister Yasmin said, the very experience of life itself can play that role of a mentor if you can accept what's going on, and you can read into what's going on, and you can take what's going on as a mirror of who you are, and also as a hand that's molding you and shaping you for the better. That you can see that everything that comes to pass is for you. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. It's an opportunity to make you better. It's an opportunity to give you that patience that somebody who has the greatest sheikh in the world would develop, because the sheikh is putting him through exercises that will give him the patience that he needs. It's just going to come naturally for many of us in our lives. You don't have to create an exercise to make a person learn patience if they've got 3 children. It's just there. But it's all about how we receive it. If we resist it and we resent it and we feel this is actually stopping me and these kids are preventing me from reaching God and they're bringing out the worst in me, then we've got to change the way we see things. Because they were not sent to take you away from God. They were sent to teach you everything and give you everything you need to make your journey, to become whole, to have the patience that you need to die with, to have the rida that you need to die with, to have the shukr that you're going to have in your account in order to have the best possible existence in the next world. So I just wanted to say that to demystify this kind of thing that every single person needs a sheikh to make it to God. We know many people who, like I said, because they were able to accept their life circumstances as their sheikh, if you like, as the thing that molded and shaped them, as a giver of opportunities to learn and become closer to God, which is what a sheikh should be doing. Because of their relationship with life, as I said, they were able to have the exact same experience and sometimes better in terms of their journeying to Allah. So we have to keep that in mind. That may not be your case. I'm not saying don't go and seek this kind of help, but just be aware that there are many ways to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many ways. And as Sister Yasmin was saying, if you want to go from that level of just thinking about God intellectually and actually start to have experiences with Him, then you have to know that experiences with God are not limited to some kind of feeling you're going to feel when you read Quran, and that everything else is not an experience with God. Every single thing can be an experience with God because it's coming from God. He's the one who decided that this would happen, that this moment would take place, that you would be in this room with these people listening to this. So you can choose to be like, okay, this is from God. Or you can choose to be like, no, that was just random. You can choose to be like, I'm feeling discomfort in this situation, I'm feeling uncomfortable with it, or I'm even feeling pain, hopefully not here, but maybe in another situation. But still, this is still between me and God. Every single thing is an opportunity. And if you, let's say you fell in love with your therapist, okay? You'd be happy when a problem comes up because you get a chance to go talk to them about it. Because all you want is to sit in that room with that person and spend time with them. So what about Allah? Every single thing that drives you back to Him, whether it's an illness, whether it's pain, whether it's a sense of not accomplishing what you'd like to accomplish at this point in your life, no matter what it is, if your number one concern and your a priori relationship is with Him, then it will just be a pleasure for you, because it will bring you back to Him. It'll be something you can talk about with Him. And it'll be another chance to interact with Him. Ya Allah, I have this infection that is bothering me, and even the antibiotic is not working. But now I get to ask you about it. Now I get to bring it to you. Now I get to call on your name, Ya Shafi. Thank you. Were it not for this, I wouldn't have had this chance to talk to you with these sweet words and to know you as a Shafi. I want to know you in all the ways that I can know you. I want everything to be a chance for me to talk to you. I want every experience to be between you and me, above all, before it is with anyone else. So, Ya Rabbi, inshallah, may He give us the tawfiq and the blessing to see our lives and our experience of life in this way, and to not reject anything that comes to us from Him, no matter who it comes through, in whatever form it comes in. Ya Rabbi, give us the patience and the humility to make space for the possibility that you're telling us something in each experience that we have in this life, and that you're opening up an opportunity for us to grow and to learn and to see ourselves better and to yearn for a better world in the next life with you. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Allah, don't allow us to live in a state of ghafla, in a state of oblivion where we fail to see your hand in everything. Ya Allah, allow us to see your hand in every single thing that we do, every single thing that we feel in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, bless all our loved ones. Bless all of us to have the complete trust in you, to ask you and to lay down all our desires and wants and needs before you, and to also know that you will choose for us whatever is best for us. Ya Allah, make us people who long for akhirah, make us people who plan for akhirah, make us people who beg for akhirah, make us people who demand with patience and love and humility for the best of what akhirah promises us. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Allah. Wa salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Sayyidul Mursaleen, fi kulli waqtin wa heen. Ya Rabbana lakal hamd, wa ila sharaf al-Nabi, to the honor of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Fatiha.
الله يا الله الله يا رحيم الله يا الله الله يا كريم. Of you, my Lord, I'm asking the gate